In this video, I show you my painted minis from Tanares Adventures, as well as my 3D printed storage solution. But before we get into today's video, just want to share with you what the GGGGs are for this month. Each month, Bob the Beholder picks some of my Patreon supporters to receive gratitude gifts. And for this month of March of 2023, we have this $50 credit for Terrainify. They create STL files. They print them out for you, or they can also paint and flock the terrain. We have two $25 credits for LV427. They make unique indoor sci-fi terrain. And use my Gaming Geek 20 code in order to get 20% off your first order. We have this printed and painted Highlands Rebellion Outpost from DecoQuest. We also have two pledges for the Highlands Rebellion Kickstarter. We have this Jacoda L1 10-watt diode laser. And finally, we have $100 to go towards a crowdfunding campaign, which my Patreon supporters are currently voting upon. Use the link below to go to my Patreon page to see the list, as we are updating that as the month goes along. Now, if you haven't had a chance, go ahead and check out my first video where I show you the painted miniatures from Arena the Contest. And this side of the table has all of the miniatures from Wave 1 shipping. Now, I went all in on the Tanares Adventures Kickstarter, and in Wave 1 shipping, they sent all of the Arena the Contest miniatures, as well as this dragon set and this huge elder dragon. At the time where I filmed that video, I had yet painted up the dragons, and since that time I did paint all of them up, and I think they turned out pretty well. Pretty much followed the painting scheme from the pre-painted ones. For those of you who did get the pre-paints, I pretty much mimicked the same colors and style. You know, in my previous video, I said I sort of wish that I did pay the extra money to get the pre-painted ones just to save me the time. But I think after having seen some of the pre-painted versions of Tanares Adventures larger monsters, I think I like my versions a little bit better, just because I've highlighted and added more layers than on the pre-paints. But overall, I feel like the pre-paints are relatively well done, and definitely, if you're not big into painting, I think it was worth that money to do so. So everything from this side over on this board is from Tanares Adventures. It is the base box along with the Penumbral Dragon, although I didn't do the miniatures from that set yet, and none of the hero expansions either. I have yet to paint those. But this is everything that you're going to get. Also, I have this Dread Monster, or Tarrasque, I'm not sure what they call it. And then this Gold Dragon turned out awesome as well. So again, I did not buy the pre-painted version, and I painted these myself. And you can check out some of the other videos. I looked at a lot of unboxing videos of the pre-painted ones. Again, I think they look relatively good, but I do like the extra layer of detail that I had. And in particular, I didn't like their pre-paints of this model here. I thought it looked a little bit sloppy up front. So I like my version a little bit better. And also, my favorite miniature out of this entire set is this Augur, which everyone knows is their version of a beholder, and I painted him up. He looks like Bob the Beholder, and I like him a lot. And if you do a comparison between my Augur and the pre-painted ones, of course, they had to do it really quickly, so they have really only one layer of purple on the skin, but I was able to dry brush, add more depth and layers, and I was able to do all of the suction cups in pink, which I think makes it look awesome. I also made this pit down here blood. Instead, I think their pre-painted ones was brown, so it's supposed to be mud or quicksand, I'm not sure. So I like my version a little bit better. But this miniature overall is awesome, and I think all of these large miniatures actually turned out really well. This one, a little bit worried about recreating their pre-paints of this flame. It did come in this clear plastic, and so at one point I was looking at trying to figure out how to drill a hole so that I could put a light in there. But at the end of the day, I think I just decided to just do a fade, and I did this entirely with rattle can paint, starting with red down here at the bottom, orange in the middle, and then yellow up top, and just faded it with my rattle can. I do have an airbrush, but I don't like really using it, and found that, especially with a large piece like this, using rattle cans is perfectly fine. And then The method that I used for most of the large monsters was to spray paint them and prime them black, and then just dry brushing actually craft paint over them. I use craft paint for these larger models just because I'm a miser with how expensive the miniature paints are, so I usually use miniature paints exclusively for the smaller models. So I think they turned out really well, and I really am impressed with all the details in the models. My second favorite model out of this entire set is this Drider. I think she looks totally awesome, and I do think my version did turn out better because I did dry brush with this dark blue over the black body, which again gives it a little bit more depth than what the pre-paint looks like. I was able to do more with her skin and add some layering on the skin, so overall just really impressed. But this looks totally cool and totally awesome. The base is really cool, and overall I am really impressed with this model. Now this guy over here, I'm not sure what he is, maybe an ogre or something like that. I did paint his skin to be regular human skin color rather than the ochre or the green color that was shown on his card, and that was just again to stir things up a little bit, to make it a little bit different. I did notice that their pre-painted version of this guy, who I don't know what his name is, but he is skin colored, although online I saw this more orangish red skin color, and that's what I went with because I sort of like the different color on him instead of what the pre-paint showed. And apparently there's some storyline where he changes into this color maybe. I don't know. I haven't started playing yet, so not sure. But I sort of like that version of him. This Death Knight also looks really awesome, and he was super easy to paint. Just dry brushing again with this gray over the black primer. This demon guy also was really easy to paint as well, and I think he turned out super cool. Although his face, the details on his face I don't like so much, but the rest of this model is super cool too. This Penumbral Dragon, I think he turned out super cool looking as well. Even though I had the auger being purple as well, I think I did enough of a difference between the two in terms of the purples that he does look more distinct. Going on to the miniatures, one of the differences with the Tanares set is that you're only getting 2 of the enemies rather than 3 or 4 that came from Arena of the Contest. Now with Arena of the Contest, because there was up to 4 different models with, and the way that you keep track of them is to have different colors, I was able to base them for different colors. But the interesting thing with Arena of the Contest is that when you pull their enemy card, they can either be one color or the other, and that's why they only have 2. And what I did was I printed out these markers down at the bottom that are half, in this case, blue and half green, because you can either have one or the other. And then regarding the other card, it's going to be either orange or red. At any given time, I think there's only up to 2 max enemies for the most part. I think the exception are these skeletal guys, which came in the traditional 4 different colors, so I just printed out the 4 colors. That was the same as Arena of the Contest. But it meant less models to paint, half the amount of enemies to paint, which I sort of appreciated because I was able to finish up these models relatively quickly within a couple of weeks. And the other difference too is the Commander class, which is an addition from the different classes that were available in Arena of the Contest, where the commanders have these summons that fight alongside of them. I've never played with them yet, so I am planning on using one of the Commander classes just so that I can learn that new class for Tanares Adventures. But I did use the same method that I did for Arena of the Contest, which was to spray prime everything black and then use a white rattle can spray primer to do zenithal highlighting over that. I don't necessarily think that you have to do that. I think I could have skipped that step and just went white primer without the black underneath and without doing any zenithal. Because to be totally honest, the details on these miniatures aren't like the best. I think these miniatures are adequate, and definitely these revised miniatures are better than the original Arena of the Contest miniatures, especially the heroes. So I think just having gone with straight white primer would have been fine, but because I had already done that with my Arena of the Contest miniatures, I wanted them to look consistent with those, and that's why I ended up doing that. But had I had the opportunity to do it all over again, I think I would have just went straight white and not bothered with zenithal highlighting. You can check out this video to see some of my comparisons with different kinds of undercoating. And then finally, there was the 3D terrain box that came with 3D versions of the terrain tokens that you get. and overall they were relatively easy to paint. I went ahead and just did primarily dark gray primer and highlighted with lighter gray on top of that, so that was relatively quick to do. These barriers took more time just because it has so much junk and different colors to put in them versus some of the other terrain, and so these took quite a bit of time in painting these up. Those weren't quite as fast as some of the others. These barricades as well took some time doing the ropes or the chains, and all of these swords that are stuck in them too. But I really like these 3D versions of the portals. I just picked random colors to distinguish each one of the portals, and I think it's sort of ingenious that they just stick on the board and you can still put 4 different characters onto the squares since the portal is standing up. And that's different from the token that you get where you lay down and it's flat. So I think this is a cool 3D option. You have the columns as well. You have these markers, and then you have 3D versions of these objective markers too. So I think that looks pretty cool. I did not paint up the banners that were included in that box because I think the banners are primarily used for the PvP mode, which I have never played and really have no intention of playing PvP mode with Tanares Adventures. But I thought about go ahead and painting those up in order to use them as tokens to move around the wound track. Now I'm going to share with you the 3D printed storage solutions that I custom made, and those are going to be available. Use the links below in the video descriptions if you want to print those out. But I do know that the gamer trays are what most people are going to be using. So this is only for people like me who have their miniatures in display cases and want to really pare down the number of boxes. I got it down to 3 boxes that will store all of the cards and necessary gaming pieces. All right, so I mentioned before that I had it in 3 boxes, which is true, but I actually decided to split it into 4 boxes because just access to it is a little bit easier, because I use the scenario pack to basically store all of the rule books, storybooks, all that kinds of stuff. So this fits really nicely into one box here like this. And then here I have all of the cards that are necessary in the penumbral box. Basically, I printed out these condition markers. I do have to print out, they added, I think, bleed and shielded, which is different from Arena of the Contest, so I need to create more tokens. But yeah, check out my other video to show you how I made all of these. And then I made this little tray for the condition markers, which again I don't necessarily need to use because I have these homemade ones. But I printed out 2 of these. These are magnetized so that the covers go on them. So this is mostly the tokens from Arena of the Contest, which you do use some of these. So that was my original print, but I did print out a second one in purple, and this has the Tanares Adventures tokens in them. So you are going to be using both of those. And then I printed out this box that holds all of the enemy cards, which I think is cool. And then printed out this whole thing. And I think this might not fit on an Ender 3. This does fit. I printed out max parameters for the Prusa MK3S, and so I know for sure that it fits there, but it might be a little bit too big because I noticed with the Creality Enders, the build plate is a little bit smaller. But these are basically 3 rows and has 3 dividers here. And I have first here is a hero list that I printed out of all the available heroes. I did sleeve these cards because I think they're shuffled. I'm not 100% sure if they are, but these are the hero cards with all of the stats down at the bottom. And I did separate out all of their ability cards, which are here. And I created dividers for their all of the different class options. So these are all of the hero attack cards here, and then I do have special cards here, for example like Harun the Shapeshifter. So that's this entire row is heroes, and then these are all the NPCs, which again I did sleeve these as well because you do shuffle these too. And then I do have a blank spot, and this can be a save box for any of the heroes that we're playing. Here are PvP and solo, which I don't know if I'll use that at all. And then here is the city structures. The adventure cards are here. These are the quest cards. And then all of these are the role-based attack cards. So these are all going to be common attack cards that each of the different classes are going to have. So I have all of these here. These are boss fights, the flask cards, which you need, as well as the fate cards are back here. And then over here I have, I should have printed this out in one long piece, but I have two separate pieces. This is a loot deck, which again I did sleeve these cards. Skill cards, penumbral cards. And this is the starting items, item level 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I have the 2 legendary cards way here in the back. I did sleeve all of these because you do shuffle these and draw randomly. So that way I have all of my cards just in this one box and it fits nicely. And then in the Madness box, I actually have the Arena of the Contest stuff that I won't be using for Tanares Adventure, so it's all of the cards that I don't need. And then these larger cards as well are not necessary for Tanares Adventures. And then finally, for the actual Arena of the Contest box, I have all of my terrain pieces. So in this upper portion, most of the terrain from Tanares Adventures. And then down here at the bottom, I have all of my walls. I have the columns and the tokens and all that kinds of stuff. Here in the corner, I have all of the terrain tiles. And I created this 3D printable tile set that holds all of the different pieces in one spot, which is much more efficient than the insert that's in the original Tanares box. So all of this fits together really well and efficiently. And originally I had all of the rule books also fitting in this box, but this is actually a better way to put everything together into 4 complete boxes. I got rid of the Tanares Adventures box. It's way too tall, totally inefficient with space, as well as all the other boxes and inserts. Now the reason why I painted all of this up is because my son and I, with a couple of his friends, are going to start up a campaign. I've been watching tutorials on how to play, so I'm really excited to play the adventure. It sounds like they added a couple more steps to fill out the narrative storyline, as well as sort of the town phase, and then there's a world phase. So I think those additions is just going to make the adventure aspect of the game more engaging and exciting and more fully in-depth, because the original Arena Contest, I think, started out primarily for the PvP, and then the campaign version, I think, was pretty good, although I didn't play it completely. But Tanares Adventures is definitely focused more on the campaign. So I'm excited to start the campaign and see how the storyline goes. Pretty excited about that. So hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Use my link below to go to my Patreon page, where you might have an opportunity to be chosen by Bob the Beholder to get some of this month's GGGGs. Otherwise, happy painting, happy gaming. We'll see you next time.